Okay, everybody take a nice big deep breath and let it all go. I am here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent him who sent me. I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do because he who sent me will direct me. I will be healed as I let him teach me to heal. Amen. I think I got all the lines in there, or I might have missed one, but oh well. Remember the very first time I substituted for Herb's class, and I thought the class, everything went well, and then I went to say the closing prayer and I went totally blank. So that's how life is. So as we know, this is the Christmas time. And so I did find a couple areas or sections that have to do with Christmas from the response or the understanding of the course. And I thought this was just a really beautiful, very succinct definition of Christmas from the course. Christmas is the holiday commemorating the birth of Jesus, used as a symbol for the rebirth of Christ in ourselves, the time of Christ. And we know that in conventional spiritual storylines, I guess you could say, Jesus was the special one. He was, kind of above all of us. And we basically are considered the schmucks of the world. But from the perspective of the course, we have equal access to what the Holy Spirit has to offer, equally to that which Jesus had. And there's a lovely line near the beginning of the course where Jesus basically says, I am simply your elder brother. You and I are equal. Everything that I can accomplish or I have accomplished, you have the capability of accomplishing. So don't put me on a pedestal. I remember as a kid thinking, Jesus has got it made. He's special. There's basically no hope for me to even imagine trying to, step up to where he is. And I found it very refreshing when I came upon the course and Jesus basically wanted to let us know, no, this is available to each and every one of you. Now, of course, to access that will require that each of us, follow his lead to the undoing and understanding of what I guess you could say the rules or the direction that will help to take us there. And some of you are probably familiar with the Glossary Index from the Course in Miracles. This is written by Ken Wapnick. And actually, that's the wrong thing. I don't have it with me, but The Gifts of God, which is a book of poetry that Helen wrote. She felt that the information that came through in the prayers or the poetry was a combination of her and Jesus, and that she did have some aspect of input instead of just the scribing concept that the course came through on. And oftentimes I like to read at least one of the poems from the book around the holidays. So the one I chose for today is The Holiness of Christmas. Christmas is holy only if you come in silence to the manger to behold your holiness made visible to you. Your gifts are but your open hands made plain of grasping. Nothing else you lay before the newly born except your doubts and fears, your pale illusions, and your sickly pride, your hidden venom, and your little love, your meager treasures and unfaithfulness to all the gifts that God has given you. Here at the altar, lay all this aside to let the door to heaven open wide and hear the angels sing of peace on earth. For Christmas is a time of your rebirth. And again, the way we come to open the door to our rebirth is to not harbor anything that the ego would normally harbor. Take all those pale illusions, your sickly pride, your hidden venom, and your little love, and drop that and bring yourself fully to the altar and lay everything there so that He can help you to heal what keeps us from reconnecting to the rebirth within ourselves. Well, the holiness of Christmas. All right. So now we are going to move to a section that is in chapter 15. Where did I didn't mark the page? So 1 second. Section called Christmas is the End of Sacrifice, and it's on text 327. The section called Christmas, the End of Sacrifice. And we're going to start with paragraph number 2. The sign of Christmas is a star, a light in darkness. See it not outside yourself, but shining in the heaven within, and accept it as the sign the time of Christ has come. He comes demanding nothing, no sacrifice of any kind of anyone is asked by him. In his presence, the whole idea of sacrifice loses all meaning, for he is host to God. And you need but invite him in, who is there already, by recognizing that his host is one. No thought alien to his oneness can abide with him there. Love must be total to give him welcome, for the presence of holiness creates the holiness that surrounds it. No fear can touch the host who cradles God in the time of Christ, for the host is as holy as the perfect innocence which he protects and whose power protects him. So I was thinking in regard to, again, the story of Bethlehem, where the 3 kings were following the light that guided them towards Jesus. But what this is really saying is that light that we're looking for is always right here within each one of us, and that we've spent most of our life, most of our experiences trying to find answers outside instead of finding that answer that can only be accessed from within. And again, it's a tricky scenario because literally everything about our world, everything about our experience on planet Earth has been to teach us that, you have to figure this out. Nobody else is going to do it for you. You've got to get on it. And this is saying, yeah, that's true in the worldly sense, but we've got a different plan here, I guess you could say. And that different plan is, oh no, my light just went out. Speaking of lights, that this plan is different because we want to relinquish our control, because our control is keeping us in charge when we really want God to be the one in charge and not ourselves. And that's a very challenging thing, because when we chose to separate from the love of God, we basically said, I'm going to be in charge. God, I don't need you any longer. I'll take care of things. And so basically God says, all right, you're on your own. Have a good time. And we've been on our own ever since then. And now, as we're beginning to look at the results of having made that choice, we're starting to realize that that didn't work out quite the way we thought it would. We thought we were going to be in charge, an individual, special, and that we would still maintain that connection with love. Unfortunately, it rather backfired. And instead of having that love, we lost the connection with love. We got to be an individual and a special and different. But as we often share with this chart, we had everything that God gave us as a reflection of his love. And when we chose differently, we then found out that we lost that love, and then we had the experience of the opposite of everything instead. And it has taken us a very long time to really get that that was not a particularly good choice. And the beauty of the Course is that now we understand that as a result of that, even though it's not always easy to make that choice or decision or reconnect with that love, because we're so addicted to doing it on our own, but the option is there when we are ready to make that choice. And we need to recognize that as it dawns on us that this is not working out very well, we can now begin to see what are the effects of having chose wrongly. And hopefully, slowly, having the little willingness to be shown what his answer is instead of the answer that we have made. Again, we can get this intellectually, and it's a very huge, great, wonderful step, but because of our stubborn insistence on being an ego, whether we're aware of it or not, we play the game of I want to be in charge. And as a result, anytime I'm in charge, God is not in charge. And as a result, that's going to bring us continuation of the connection with the ego and a lack of connection with connecting with our true selves. But as we become more and more in tune with the idea that me being in charge is really not the best value I've got going here, we thought it was. We got us what we thought we wanted, but that aspect of who I am as love was lost. And as we begin to desire that reconnection with that desire for love, our willingness to continue and to keep choosing more and more frequently for that love, which is brought to us by removing our investment in what we believe is reality. And then slowly we begin to trust that the Holy Spirit's answer here is way better than what it is when I'm in charge. And again, it sounds like that should be, oh, that's a great idea, let's do it. But I also know, and I'm sure most of you who have been practicing for a while, you know that the addiction for the ego is pretty intense. It's so strongly woven into our life experience that letting go of my attachment to thinking I'm right or knowing anything. And we know that beautiful workbook lesson number 5, I'm never upset for the reason I think. I think I'm upset because of what's going on the outside. And the Course is trying to always remind us, you're upset because the choice that's been made as an ego. And it is bringing the results of guilt, sin, and fear in some form. And it is showing me that I'm an innocent victim of circumstances beyond my control. But in essence, it's really showing me what's in my mind that's running the show of the ego and keeping the ego perpetuated. And slowly, we become aware of the, I guess you could say, the effects of what that choice has been, so that we begin to question more and more frequently of what do I want? Do I want to continue to perpetuate the illusion? Or do I want to step back and let the Holy Spirit fill in the space that was left empty by dropping the storyline of the ego?
So Marianne, could I ask, or just ask a question, I guess? So any discomfort we have over anything that we perceive is only the smokescreen for our having separated from God's opinion. We don't have, God didn't, maybe it seems like that whatever happened in the beginning, the thing with the apple, that if we could have just given the apple back and said we were sorry, in terms of a storyline or how the world works, that would seem like that would have been enough, and nobody thought of that. But that's not really, it's never about that. It's about us. It's not about our body, anything that our body seems to need, or anything that our bodies seem to get involved in. So there's really nothing we can do as an ego. We can't give the apple back. We can't, that's not what anybody's talking about. They're talking about the realm where you give God his rightful place in the universe for the oneness.
Correct. And, where we're sitting now, for the most part, we're being asked to be aware of what the choices we've made are bringing to us. Not to feel guilty, not to browbeat yourself, but simply become aware, oh, I guess I've chosen wrongly, and the result is something other than love. And when we get to the point,
because it would have been something else if it wasn't the apple. If we're thinking in terms of the way that the ego is talking about our life, that it was an apple that caused the problem, and we could blame it on the apple, and So we're never thinking in terms of anything that's going on in the physical, that whatever's going on in the physical that we're not happy with is the result of our choice to do it ourselves. Try to say, so I'll make a pie out of that apple, or I'll do this, or I'll do that. And that isn't, that it may occur to us that that's something to do, but it would not have any influence on our choice to separate, that we separated and in our mind, and it's not because of the things around us that we stay separate, but because of our choice, our mindset.
Correct. And, I think where most of us sit thinking of one solution across the board for absolutely everything that this world presents makes us, how can we wrap our head around that? I was fine. I woke up this morning, everything was good. And suddenly somebody said something, did something, ran me off the road. And unequivocally, my mind will immediately go to, if it wasn't for this situation or scenario, I would be okay. And the Course is always trying to help us understand, if you can lose your peace in any way, shape, or form, it has to be coming because a result of having chosen for the ego. End of story across the board. And, I think there's probably no one that starts out with a course initially that has a clue what that could possibly mean. But as we begin to understand this on a deeper and deeper level, we begin to trust that literally everything that the ego is up to is an effect of having chosen for the ego and the results that brings that forth. And again, lots of practice for us to get to the point where we understand this on an unequivocal level that starts to make sense. And as we begin to ask for healing more and more frequently, and we start to have shifts in our world experiences, not because I've prayed to fix it and I have an agenda as to what it's supposed to look like if it is fixed, but simply, I don't know what the answer is. In fact, the Course would say, we don't even know what the problem is, let alone the solution. But when I'm willing to drop the entire picture and let the Holy Spirit fill in the blanks, a reflection of that love will start to happen in our world, just like the projection of the choice for the ego automatically gets played out.
So Marianne?
Yes, Jason.
Hi.
Hi.
Are you familiar with Dr. Bruce Lipton?
Yes.
So he's the father of epigenetics.
Okay.
And he basically says that epigenetics basically says that your mind determines what genes get expressed. So you don't, if your mom had cancer, you're not going to get cancer because your mind determines which genes get expressed. So he talks about, one of the things he talks about is, 95% of our behavior is from our unconscious mind based on programs.
Yep.
And 5% of that behavior is based on our conscious mind. So the ego is kind of like running on that unconscious mind, even though we've learned it in the Course. We've learned so much in the Course.
Yep.
We're running on our unconscious mind.
Almost always.
So that helped, his work has helped me kind of understand a little bit more about how challenging this Course is.
Absolutely, because how can I even access something I don't even know is there if it's on a subconscious level, how can I, as Mary Ann, figure it out? Impossible. And
Well,
yeah, I think it's important not to get too wrapped around specifics, because whether it be your physical body or belief systems, you need to wrap those all in one package and understand no matter what the specific appearance may show up to be, we want to go back to the cause. And the cause is always some form of a reflection of having put the ego engaged in its thing instead of the Holy Spirit. Because we can evaluate, we can get carried away with trying to figure things out. And it really isn't that specific as to what is actually.
I was trying to raise hand, but put the laughing sign.
Exactly is going on. And of course, as bodies in the world, we're going to start with where we are. But ultimately, we will eventually realize, the specifics per se are not of great value, because literally everything is taking us to that place. Does that help, Jason?
I think you muted me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So it does. And one of the ways that he says you can start to reprogram your subconscious mind is through, listening to meditations and things like that when you're in a theta state right before you're ready to go to bed. And then also your brain waves are in a theta state. And then also repetition. So if you repeat things, eventually that also gets into your subconscious mind. So it explains the course again, how important the workbook lessons are and how much the repetition is so important.
Right, but again, from the perspective of the course, we want to not have an agenda. Know that you're lacking peace. Understand that ultimately you really don't know what the problem is, and drop the entire scenario so that you can align with an answer that is beyond anything, beyond your subconscious, beyond any concept that Jason or Mary Ann could possibly come up with. Just really want to get to the core that is beyond anything that has anything to do with the world or the body.
So I'm thinking for myself, when I have an idea or get other ideas from other places, that I can ask the Holy Spirit to help me interpret that in terms of what his agenda is.
Yes.
That's what helps. So the repetition of the ideas are good until you hit the wall where you don't understand something. And if it, you just have, then that's your next thing to ask the Holy Spirit for help with.
Correct. And certainly in this journey, we are all going to be continually stepping into deeper and deeper connections with the core, and what could be helpful within the illusion or in the world for some time. Eventually, we will cast that aside because we really want only to know, who am I? That's the top of, top of the mountain. Yes.
Yes. I want to mention, Jason was talking about a very important point, that we don't know what's on our unconscious. And it's important for me to remember that how that's revealed, as far as my understanding of how what the course teaches, is what I see is in my unconscious, is what's reflected in my relationships with the others.
Indeed. And that's such a valuable awareness, because what I'm seeing out there is an effect of the projection of that subconscious level, of which we have put into place in a way where we will always say, if this is where the problem lies, this is what needs fixed, this person needs to be changed, or whatever form it may come forth in. And in essence, it does not have anything to do with this. But where we're sitting, that's our experience. So you begin with where you are with your experience, and slowly step back and step back and step back and step back. And new awarenesses of that will begin to dawn on your mind. You can't
just
wait to happen.
Just to add to what I was saying,
Mhm.
one of the things Dr. Lipton talks about is he talks about programs and how we've developed these programs that run our unconscious mind until we're about 7 years old, from about birth to 7.
Yep.
And if something is easy in your life, it's because you have a program for it. If it's hard, you don't have a program for it and you have to work at it.
Okay.
So that was also very helpful.
Yep. And something Ken used to comment about, and that is, doesn't matter if the ego is especially good or the ego is especially bad, as long as it is. It lives and breathes for some type of identity that I am special because. And it doesn't matter if it's I'm the most wonderful or I'm the worst, as long as I've got an identity that I can hold firm to. And anytime I hold firm to an identity, I am holding to a part of a belief system that says, this is me, this is the way this works out, and I'm in control. God is not in control. So the more we can connect with allowing that other possibility to come forth to make healing, the less I'm attached to anything that has to do with me, my specifics, the importance and value that I have. And again, that sounds easy on paper, but because we're so wrapped up in being the hero of the dream, everything that I do or act or ways I behave or connections and attachments that I carry, I don't want to let go of this identity of who I think I am. I think I should be in control, and occasionally I'll call on God and ask him to show me something different. But eventually we really want to come to the point where we're literally like a white lighthouse, as like a lighthouse, where the light just emanates from me. It has absolutely no aspect of me being in control of what is going on. I'm just the vehicle. And, of course, most of us aren't quite ready for that yet. But each time we ask to see it differently, we're literally giving less attachment to this, and we're, I guess you could say, feeding our understanding of this more and more. And then that will automatically then become the reflection of the light that I am identified with now.
Yeah, so all we're asked to do is just to look, and that is the reprogramming. Ego, the whole thing about doing mantras and affirmations, ego figures that out. It's just, it figures a way around it, like water, seeps in there. And Ken talks a lot about, doing the lessons. We can't shout down the ego.
Absolutely not. And, many people, when they come to the course, will apply the workbook lessons from the perspective of mantras and so on, because people are used to doing that. This is different. If you notice the workbook lessons, Jesus is very specific. Do this, every lesson is a little bit different. And do this, at a certain time and whatnot. Because he wants to train us to not be in charge of thinking, I know how to do this. And
Well, I found initially that the ego could make chop suey out of all those lessons because they were just, it sounded ridiculous. I remember that. And I won't even do the first several lessons. I can't swallow that, but I understand it in a way that I can work with, but I can't swallow the way the words are put. And I just don't seem to get a lot out of an affirmation that says nothing I see means anything except when I'm having a problem. But it seems like that the words can be twisted any which way. However, the introduction to the idea that God is and everything else it does not exist. It is not to have those kind of words portrayed and listened to and then repeated. But the words aren't what do it. But you do have to have your mind changed to the possibility that those words will mean something eventually. And so that's where the words have to come in. You can't like say, well, I'm not going to say that now. I'm not going to have a mantra. That's what led me to where I am now.
Exactly. And I would say, when I say things like that, I'm not even asking you to stop doing mantras or whatever else makes you feel more comfortable. Acknowledge it, do it, but keep asking to be shown what is the highest road in this. I want to lead to that place. And when I first started studying the Course, there obviously were many places in the Course where, nothing made a whole lot of sense in what Jesus was trying to help us with. But as I kept practicing, I would, if I would read a section and there was confusion, I would put a question mark in the column. And I would basically say, okay, Holy Spirit, I haven't got a clue what you're talking about. If this is true, I want you to show me that it's true. And, sometimes months later, years later, all of a sudden it would dawn on me of what that meant. So you got to start with where you are. You can't pretend. I absolutely don't want anybody to think, oh, well, Marianne said this, so this has to be right. Don't go there. If this doesn't settle within you and resonate with you, keep asking. Keep asking to be shown. When life, hits the pits, that's when you start digging a little bit deeper. And then the answers keep bringing themselves to the surface.
Yeah, like your own determination that you want to understand it is what's pivotal to you going there. So you hit all the places that you don't understand, and that's where on the other side of that, Jesus is waiting to explain it. If you go in that space, it's just, and that I guess is what keeps me going, because there are all those things that keep coming up with a question mark. And I've had some answers, and I guess I see that nobody else does at this point. And that's what keeps me going on.
Yep. And, think about this as when we first start out with the Course, this blue book is like a steak put in front of a 6-day-old child. And you say, here, eat. Well, there's just no way we can digest this information because we're so immature, so lack of understanding of what it is. But if we just take one little sentence, chop it up a little bit, stir it up, and put one little spoonful in, and slowly you start to digest one little tiny bite at a time. And eventually you can then come to the point where things start to, the dots start to connect, in a way where it makes a lot more sense than it did before. But you can't.
Marianne?
Yeah.
I think that when you ask for an answer, you got to be in your right mind to get the
Absolutely.
answer, because you cannot mix the right mind up with the ego mind. They don't mix.
Well, that's correct, Bob. Not only that, if you're in a wrong mind, there is no access to the possibility
Right,
of
right,
another question. It's
right.
only
You gotta
when-
be,
Yeah,
you gotta be in the
Yeah.
right mind to,
Yeah.
to get the answer.
Well,
absolutely.
if you're almost out of your other mind, you're more open to your
Yes.
right mind then, right?
Correct. Correct. Right, so the sign of Christmas is a star, a light in the darkness. And we're certainly all looking for that light in the darkness. See it not outside yourself, but shining in the heaven within, and accept it as the sign the time of Christ has come. And be very aware that that sign has been there all the time. It's now we are starting to access the way in which we can connect with that so that the healing can happen. It comes demanding nothing. And if you're reading the course and you feel any connotation of negativity, you're bad, you're wrong, you're not doing this well enough, any of those attributes, understand that that's your ego attaching to the process of the course. Because this is simply God with his hands out saying, come home. Anything else that is added to that is some form of my resistance to connecting with what that truth is. And I find that the longer I do the course, the less that sense of, I'm bad or I'm wrong, if that starts to slowly move down the ladder, I guess you could say. And I can see that all the words in the course have always been loving, and that nothing in the course has anything to do with anything but pure absolute love and connection. Anything else we see or filter through that is coming from our ego investment in our mind. So let's see, no sacrifice of any kind of anyone is asked of him. In his presence, capital H, capital P, the whole idea of sacrifices loses all meaning. And, again, from the perspective of conventional religions, this concept of sacrifice is strongly built into the storyline of Christianity. Jesus died for our sin. How can we hold that and not feel guilty? It's kind of impossible. That was never intended to be the story that he had to offer. And how we then, around Easter time, I'm going to give up eating chocolate or going to the movies or whatever it is that I'm going to prove to God that I love him. God doesn't need us to prove that we love him. He needs to be shown that you are choosing for love. So none of that applies to anything that the course has to offer. And again, if you've been brought up in that kind of a programming, I guess you could say, that's going to run the show until it finally dawns on us. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about the fact that we're loved. And there's a couple beautiful lines in the course where he says, you are loved, you have always been loved, and you will always remain loved. And what could any one of us ask that could be higher than that? And anytime you have a sense of unworthiness, fear, guilt, sin, suffering, pain, know that you have chosen against that understanding of that connection with you are loved, you have always been loved, and you will always be loved. So if you catch yourself in any aspect of that, it's a reminder, okay, Holy Spirit, not feeling too loving here. Show me how to see through your eyes, how you see me, because when I look at me, it's not very loving. And so we can literally use every single moment when we catch ourselves going down the toilet, I guess you could say, as an opportunity to be shown another way.
And then isn't that really the mantra you're looking for?
Well, yes, you could
Where
say
you
that
keep
a little bit.
repeating, like a little chihuahua holding on to its bone, you keep repeating what it is you're being told, or how how the words are supposed to like create a softer bed for you. That continuation of the mantra of those words is what will be absolutely helpful.
And again, as long as we don't have any investment in what the outcome of that is, simply, I
Yes.
want peace beyond absolutely everything else. For he is host to God. I don't know if I missed something. And you need but invite him in, who is there already, by recognizing that his host is one, and no thought alien to his oneness can abide in him there. So again, we're either aligning with an alien nature or we're aligning with the truth nature. And so, as Tashara said earlier, a great deal of the process of practicing this is to observe how frequently I find myself in my alien nature. And when I catch that, begin to drop it and align with his way of seeing me through a totally different way. But as long as I cling to that, as long as I hold on to that, I don't leave space for his answer. And I'm always kind of amazed at how, if you don't feel well or you're in pain or something difficult is happening in our lives, how the ego mind is almost like a neon light that just wants to keep hacking away at that. But I'm in pain. This hurts. This is not good. I wish that person would stop that. And it's so captivating of our energy to keep us from stopping and saying, wait, I don't know. I want to see what you have to offer instead of what I'm playing in here. But the ego is all about keep us over here, keep us over here. Don't step over here. This isn't where you belong. You've chosen this, and we want to follow your lead because that's what you've asked for.
Marianne,
Yep.
that can we judge what love is?
Not
Like-
really.
Like sometimes I may say something to somebody, and afterwards I say to myself that doesn't sound like a very loving thing, but that might have been just exactly the thing that person had to hear at
Right.
that time, and I'm probably judging it from my ego's point of mind.
That could very well be, Bob. And it's really not easy to decipher what's going on, but if you
Right.
continue to do your best to choose from a place of, I want to find out who I am, I want to find out who my brother is, you show me. Yeah, because that person may need something other than pure love right now.
Right.
And you could be that vehicle.
Because again, the pure love is liable to make that person very frightened.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm thinking though how what you just said, Bob, about So if you come across in a way that you don't think is loving, all of a sudden, I find myself more able to say, I'm sorry in the moment and move on. It's interesting. I don't think about it as much as I used to, because if I did make a mistake or I did, that's all it was. And that's been an interesting, for me, a very positive outcome of studying the courses. I'm able to ask, and then if it doesn't feel right, to say, I'm sorry, that just didn't sound like something I really wanted to say, and just back off from it. It is so interesting to be able to change my mind and move along with God easier than my own judgments about it.
Versus, I don't know about the rest of you, but having made a mistake and then carrying that storyline with me forever. I mean, it's like carrying it in your backpack and you just keep repeating it in your mind over and over and over and over and over and over. And to then be able to come to a place where you can go, hey, I did the best that I knew how to do at that moment. I can release myself from that. And again, the ego literally doesn't care what is required to keep you over here. Absolutely doesn't matter. There's no significance other than it's captivated our thinking. And anytime we're able to pull away, even for a moment, and ask to see it differently, we're starting to leave the inroads of a healing nature.
I'll be back in a few minutes. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Love must be total to give him welcome. For the presence of the holiness creates the holiness it surrounds it. Excuse me, the holiness that surrounds it. Sorry, a little part of the end of the page for some reason got cut off. So let me read that again. No fear can touch the host who cradles God in this time of Christ, for the host is as holy as the perfect innocence which he protects and whose power protects him. And again, I don't know. So important. I don't know. I don't know. And by the way, I don't know. And this idea of love must be total to give him welcome. One of the things Ken repeated so many times was you literally cannot leave anyone in the sonship out and find your way over here. Impossible. We're all one, or we're all separate. And if we believe in oneness, everything over here has to be understood as the belief in something that's not real. And that when we choose for this, literally everyone has to come with me. You can't leave part of your family over here. And y'all know that sounds kind of challenging, because how do I forgive a brother who all I can see, hear, and experience is an idiot or whatever it may happen to be? And how dare he, she, they, them, whatever, how dare them act the way they do? And the desire for them to do something different so then I can be okay lies in my hands, because the only place of shift and change lies in what am I choosing and what do I continue to choose. And when I can wash my hands of thinking I know anything in this world, and gosh, the programming has been set up that I pretty much think I know everything about everything. And certainly not everybody on my list is on the same page as I am. And as long as we're holding firm to I know, keeping the door from opening, not just for my brother, but for myself. And some of the sections in the course talks about being in prison. If you hold the door closed to the prisoner, you're holding the door closed to yourself as well. Again, a lot easier talked about than living or experiencing from that place. Right. Love must be total to give him welcome, for the presence of holiness creates the holiness that surrounds it. No fear can touch the host who cradles God in the time of Christ. For his host is as holy as the perfect innocence which he protects and whose power protects him. And I'm reminded of Jesus dying on the cross. His response to the people that seemingly were doing some pretty nasty things to him was unequivocally, teach only love, for that is what you are. Because he knew unequivocally that this is who he was, where his mind was, which then he could see his brother only through this lens, not the dualistic lens anymore. So the choice for the Holy Spirit is the transcendence of my belief in what is real, to replace it by an understanding beyond what I have accepted as reality. So we're either all guilty or we're all innocent. And I think it's rather humorous how I want God to shine his light on me, but the heck with the rest of you dudes, just take care of me. Well, if I'm playing that game, I'm deciding what the answer is here, and the answer is not you or me. It's we're all one or we're all separate. Okay, paragraph 3. This Christmas, give the Holy Spirit everything that would hurt you. Let yourself be healed completely, that you may join with him in healing, and let us celebrate our release together by releasing everyone with us. Leave nothing behind, for release is total. When you have accepted with me, you will give it with me. All pain and sacrifice and littleness will disappear in our relationship, which is as innocent as our relationship with our Father and as powerful. Pain will be brought to us and disappear in our presence. And without pain, there can be no sacrifice. And without sacrifice, there must be love. So, this first line, this Christmas, give the Holy Spirit everything that would hurt you. Well, talk about an invitation. Give him absolutely everything that would hurt you. Everything, across the board. And how often are we willing to dig from that level where we're willing to drop all investments in anything that can hurt me in any way, shape, or form, and allow him to fill that space for us? And yet he's offering us literally everything in replacement of a belief in something that's a lie. Let yourself be healed completely, that you may join with him in healing, and let us celebrate our release together by releasing everyone with us. And again, all or nothing. We need to realize I can't heal one aspect of my life, or be even willing to heal one aspect of my life and leave the other one in the middle of the room. Have to be willing to go across the board, no matter what. And obviously, there's some situations or people that it is a little bit more difficult to come to that depth of healing. Because some people just aren't worthy of God's love, from my point of view. Or even if I have the desire to have that be healed, am I willing to keep focusing in on that until I move beyond any investment in the lie that holds it together? Let yourself be healed completely, that you may join with him in healing, and let us celebrate our release together by releasing everyone with us. And if we really understood, these are both my hands, I could say, I want this hand to be healed, but heck with this hand. But if I understood that this hand is literally part of the same scenario, and that it would require me to see both hands equally healed in order to come to an understanding beyond what we have accepted as our reality. If I want it just for me, I might as well forget it. Because my brother is just as worthy of love as I am. And if I hold that place, I'm keeping myself from experiencing that love.
That's because we are all one.
Absolutely, Bob. The whole concept of oneness, it requires that we all connect in that place of love and oneness. This is the world of duality. This is the world of oneness. If I want oneness, it has to include everything and everyone. In the Bible, it sometimes would talk about the idea, it rains equally on all of us. Well, if I think I'm special, because at this moment it looks sunny in my world, somebody else is experiencing rain, I haven't got the full picture. Let yourself be healed completely, that you may join with him in healing, and let us celebrate our release together by releasing everyone with us. And again, he's not telling us how to figure that out. He's asking us to release your investment in it and ask that he show us what that means, that he show us how to come to the place where we literally see through his eyes instead of through the eyes of my ego. Leave nothing behind, for release is total. And when you have accepted it with me, you will give it with me. So again, leave nothing behind. And if you're at a place where you just can't release it at this moment, just sit with it, smile at it, and go, all right, Holy Spirit, not quite ready to release this one. But I'm willing to have you show me how to come to the place where we release this together and I reconnect with what you have to say instead of what I'm clinging to. All pain and sacrifice and littleness will disappear in our relationship, which is as innocent as our relationship with our Father and as powerful. So, how beautiful is that? All pain and sacrifice and littleness will disappear in our relationship, which is as innocent as our relationship with our Father and as powerful. But again, if I have an investment in somehow thinking that I know better than God, I keep the door closed to understanding it on the level that healing can bring. Pain will be brought to us and disappear in our presence, and without pain, there can be no sacrifice. You know, and how much of our daily life experience radiates around some form of pain, whether it's physical, emotional, you know, I'm right and you're wrong, whatever you might describe it as being, is always some form of me trying to figure out how to do it, me being in charge, which always means if I'm still playing in charge, then God is not on the throne. And the separated state is going to run the show until we stop and we choose to be realigned with a way beyond my capacity to figure out how to heal. And without sacrifice, their love must be. And, you know, I think it's always kind of interesting, this idea of sacrifice. And I'm not going to do this course from a place of sacrifice. I'm going, when I want this course and what this course offers me more than absolutely everything, that's when I can access the healing depth of what this course has to offer. But if I'm doing the course from a place of sacrifice because the blue book says I should do this, instead of I want this more than absolutely positively anything else, then you've relinquished your control completely, and you then find the way back to that connection with love. Paragraph 4. You who believe that sacrifice is love must learn that sacrifice is separation from love. For sacrifice brings guilt as surely as love brings peace. Guilt is the condition of sacrifice, as peace is the condition for the awareness of your relationship with God. Through guilt, you exclude your father and your brother from yourself. Through peace, you invite them back, realizing that they are where your invitation bids them be. What you exclude from yourself seems fearful, or you endow it with fear and try to cast it out, though it is part of you. Who can perceive part of himself as loathsome and live within himself in peace? And who can try to resolve the conflict of heaven and hell in him by casting heaven out and giving it the attributes of hell, without experiencing himself as incomplete and lonely? So you believe that sacrifice is love. You believe that sacrifice is love. You must learn that sacrifice is separation from love. And again, in many conventional spiritualities, this whole idea of sacrifice is so deeply woven into the belief system. And we can say, well, it's because that thought system taught us that. But understand that that's really because it's a reflection of the choice for the ego that then gets projected out into the world. So we wanted sacrifice to maintain the ego. And when we start to understand that we want to move to a place where I want only love, I want only peace, and I don't really care how it unfolds. I don't want to play the game of the ego any longer. For sacrifice brings guilt as surely as love brings peace. And again, whenever we choose this, the effects are going to look like this. When we choose this, the effects are automatically going to look like this. So if we continue to believe in sacrifice, know that it's going to bring us some form of guilt. And just as love brings peace, the ego will reflect as some form of guilt that will continue to run the show and operate things. Through guilt, you exclude your father and your brothers from yourself. So when you live from a place of the ego, the automatic result is going to be some form of staying stuck in that guilt and bringing that instead of peace to mind.
Mary Ann,
Yeah, Bob.
this whole world is nothing but sacrifice.
Absolutely.
Everything in the world is sacrifice.
Absolutely, Bob.
I can't name one thing in the world that's not sacrifice.
Correct. And, when you started the course, that wasn't your awareness. It just seemed like this is the way it was. You got to deal with it. And the course keeps trying to understand how the ego was set up, why the ego was set up, and what the results of this setup are, so that eventually it'll dawn on us that the game that we've been playing is just simply not a very beneficial game, and it certainly will never bring us the peace of God. It's
Right.
not-
Every time I want to change or do something, I have to give something up in order to do it.
Absolutely. Across the board,
Everything.
everything. Yep. Okay. Guilt is the condition of sacrifice, as peace is the condition for the awareness of the relationship with God. And this always has to come down to, am I willing to connect with my relationship with a true God instead of continue to align with what the results the ego is bringing me? Again, the way we do that is to keep observing what's going on here, what's going on here. And as we awaken to our understanding of seeing the effects of what the choices we've been making, it'll eventually dawn on us that I just don't want to go there. I don't want to play in that arena any longer. I choose not to allow that to direct my experience any longer. Through peace, you invite them back, realizing that they are where your invitation bids them be. So again, sacrifice and guilt are running the show. When you stop and invite the other way, you are now inviting the storyline of this instead of the storyline of this. And again, it's simple and yet difficult because we're so addicted to it. But at least we're starting to become aware. There is another way. And eventually you will start to recognize that choosing the story your way, and then eventually dropping the story to allow another way, will take us to a more healed mind. What you exclude from yourself seems fearful, for you endow it with fear and try to cast it out, though it is part of you. Well, isn't that what the ego does? It makes this choice and then it tries to cast it out, blaming it on something or someone else, thinking that that would get rid of it. But that doesn't get rid of it. Only the shift from here to here will ever bring any significant help or change. As long as we're playing over here, manipulating the scenario, we're playing in the ego realm. And I think Andrea said something earlier about this idea of me being in charge. Well, when I'm in charge, and just think of all the many ways that each of us have manipulated the world in order for me to be in charge. You know, that one didn't work. Let me try the next one. And on and on and on and on and on the list goes. And seldom did it ever occur to us, I need to get out of the way completely. I don't know. I don't know the problem. I don't know the answer. And I want to connect with what does know the answer. What you exclude from yourself seems fearful, where you endow it with fear and try to cast it out, though it is part of you. So when we chose for this, we projected it into the world, thinking we got rid of this, only to get to see it facing in our mirror every day of our lives and constantly pointing a finger at, if it wasn't for this, I could be okay. The whole time, not recognizing it's one big setup to keep us recycled in the thought system of the ego over and over again. Who can perceive himself as loathsome and live within himself in peace? Well, there's a great question, right? How can I think of myself as a piece of shit and possibly be able to connect with myself as love? Not going to happen. And how many times during our daily life experience are we looking at ourselves from something other than I am love and I know who I am? Well, I don't know about the rest of you. I'm not always there. And it's real easy to get stuck there and stay there and recycle there. Until I slowly begin to invest more and more. And I don't know, Holy Spirit, you show me who I am, because I don't know. So guilt is the condition of sacrifice, as peace is the condition for the awareness of a relationship with God. Through guilt, you exclude your father and your brothers from yourself. As long as I'm aligned with guilt, sin, and fear, duality, I can't see myself clearly, I can't see my brother clearly, and I can't see God clearly. So, of course, when I look out in the world, I'm going to see projected out into the world something other than love. And do I want to know what love is, or do I want to continue to do this on my own? But it has to dawn on me that what we've chosen was simply not a good choice. All right, so again, through guilt, you exclude your father, your brothers from yourself. Through peace, you invite them back, realizing that they are where your invitation bids them be. Again, whether we remember it or not, we talked earlier about the unconscious level. I may not remember setting this up this way, but the only way I can become aware of what's going on is to observe the effects that get presented in my world. And if the effects in my world are showing me something other than love, it's a reminder this has to be in gear and I don't have to stay there. I can choose differently. What you exclude from yourself seems fearful, or you endow it with fear and try to cast it out, though it is part of you. Well, again, we don't realize that we're casting out part of ourselves. We don't get that. And yet the Course is trying to remind us, you're seeing through the lens of the ego because that was the choice you made, because that was the choice you wanted. And as you become aware, the effects of that choice are probably not to your advantage, and you can do it differently. Who can perceive part of himself as loathsome and live within himself in peace? Again, that would be impossible. How can I look at myself, as that workbook lesson talks, as the home of evil, sin, and darkness, and know myself as love? Impossible. So as we practice, we begin to be aware, wow, look at this moment. Am I seeing myself through the lens of absolute pure love that God is promising that I am? Or is that voice in my head that says you're a piece of shit, you're, again, the home of evil, sin, and darkness, and if anyone could see who you were, they would recoil as though you were a snake. We need to get in touch with those kinds of thoughts of lack, limitation, there's something wrong with me, and so on, because that has to be coming from here. It simply can't be coming from here if I'm still identifying with any aspect of that way of being. And who contrived to resolve the conflict of heaven and hell in him by casting heaven out and giving its attributes of hell without experiencing himself as incomplete and lonely? Again, becoming aware, I'm experiencing my life, my experiences here based on what is in charge. And if what is in charge is the ego, know that I'm not going to see through the lens of the Holy Spirit. So the beauty of that is take those opportunities of recognizing the ego and be reminded, this is showing me who's in charge. Don't add guilt, sin, and fear to it. Simply become aware. This is an effect of a choice that's not bringing me what I want any longer. And I'm now willing to find out how to see through his eyes instead of my eyes. Because, if we read, where was it? Something to the effect of, if we're aligned with our truth, nothing can disrupt us or cause us pain in any way, shape, or form. I don't know about the rest of you, but that sounds pretty darn appealing to me, because certainly that's not how most of my life has been lived. Number 6, so is it that in all your seeking for love, you seek for sacrifice and find it. Yet you find not love, yet you find not love. It is impossible to deny what love is and still recognize it. The meaning of love lies in what you have cast outside yourself, and it has no meaning apart from you. It is what you prefer to keep that has a meaning, while all that you would keep away holds all the meaning of the universe and holds the universe together in its meaning. Unless the universe were joined in you, it would be apart from God, and to be without him is to be without meaning. So it is that in all you're seeking for love, you seek for sacrifice and find it. So basically what Jesus is saying here is you didn't realize that you were seeking for sacrifice. You thought you were seeking for love in sacrifice. Jesus is kind of here to straighten us out, I guess you could say, and show us that the reason why this has never worked is because we are walking in the wrong direction. And based on our ego belief system, we are getting what we really thought we wanted, but it is not providing us what we really want when it really comes to our awareness that I don't want sacrifice anymore. I don't know how to do this, but I do want to align with your connection with love. Saying, when you seek for sacrifice, you will not find love. It is impossible to deny what love is and still recognize it. Well, I mean, that's pretty absurd kind of question. Can I have the understanding of love if I close the door to my understanding of what love is? And it's only when we can flip that around, connect with what really is love by getting completely out of the way, that you can come to the depth of awareness of something beyond that. The meaning of love lies in what you have cast outside yourself, and it has no meaning apart from you. So I guess you could say, when we come to the point where we can completely align just with the understanding of what love is, all the rest of it will fall away. And that requires me to be willing to release literally every single thing in this process. All right. The meaning of love lies in what you have cast outside yourself, and it has no meaning apart from you. So again, my investment in believing what love is versus what love really is are totally different things. And what do I want? Am I willing to drop completely my investment in thinking I know? It is what you prefer to keep that has a meaning. So if I want my ego more than I want the Holy Spirit, I will reap the effects of that choice. And the way I can find the answer to who's in charge is to observe my world. If my world is expressing something in absolute total peace, joy, and connectedness, know that I want this more than I want this. And I know you can sit in your chair and say, but you don't understand. I want God more than I want absolutely, positively anything else. But to the degree you're invested in this thought system, this is always what's going to run the show. And again, that's why it's so valuable to totally release and let go any investment in the belief that you think you know anything. For those who could thrust heaven and its creator aside without a sense of sacrifice and loss. Here. And so long will you also perceive yourself as a victim of sacrifice, justified in sacrificing others. Am I in the wrong paragraph here? All right, so I think we're in 4, paragraph or line 8. And who can try to resolve the conflict of heaven and hell in him by casting heaven out and giving it the attributes of hell without experiencing himself as incomplete and lonely? So again, the only place that you can experience yourself complete and, unlonely, I guess you could say, is when you connect completely with that understanding of love and drop completely anything else that holds that intact. Paragraph 5. As long as you perceive the body as your reality, so long will you perceive yourself as lonely and deprived. And so long will you also perceive yourself as a victim of sacrifice, justified in sacrificing others. For who could thrust heaven and its creator aside without a sense of sacrifice and loss? Are you, who could suffer sacrifice and loss without attempting to restore himself? Yet how could you accomplish this yourself when the basis of your attempts is to believe in the reality of deprivation? Deprivation breeds attack, being in the belief that the attack is justified. And as long as you would remain the deprivation, attack becomes salvation and sacrifice becomes love. So as long as you perceive the body as your reality, I'm just going to stop there because that's a big part of this storyline. I am the hero of the dream. The main focus of my presence on planet Earth is that I'm the hero of this dream. I'm number one. Well, if I'm number one, that means that my brother is different from me because I can't be number one and my brother be number one unless I drop my investment in that concept of a body that is different from other bodies. I have to be willing to connect with what oneness is beyond my body and beyond my brother's body. Again, we've been programmed to see, to experience, to live as this body. And basically, it's all we know. My body is who I am. It's different than your body. And of course, we take it a step further. I'm right, you're wrong. And on and on and on and on and on and on the story goes. And that requires us to, yes, you could say, reprogramming the way things are. Because you see, I can sit here and say, I just want love beyond absolutely everything else. But if I want to maintain my individuality, I am not doing what this is asking us to do. I'm not releasing myself from the attachment of this body. And there's so many places in the course where we'll talk about the idea that we're not really bodies. Well, that's a nice statement, but not one that we accept or believe yet. I believe I am this body. I believe my body has value. I believe my body is who I am. And yeah, I want the love of God. But am I willing to relinquish my attachment to what I have accepted as who and what I am so that I can realign with truth rather than my attachment of the body? And when we talk about the idea of rising above the battleground, there's a place in the course where it talks about when you rise above the battleground, in that instant, you don't have a body. There is no time or in an out of time experience. It's only when we come back here that we re-identify with the body. And initially, we're going to have to practice that because I'm very uncomfortable being without a body, out of time, and out of space. And yet, I love the concept of the little willingness in the Course, where it's constantly trying to remind us, if you choose for another way, in that instant, you're inviting your understanding of what you are beyond the body. But most of the time, we're going to identify with this character as being what I am. So we need great practice to come to the point where we can literally connect to the point where we absolutely unequivocally know that this is not who I am. I am beyond the body. But that's going to take some practice because we are so, invested in this idea. In fact, basically we've connected as our connection with the separated self since the Big Bang. And all of a sudden, the Course comes along and says, there's another way of doing this. Are you willing to drop your investment in what you have so carefully programmed as your reality to find out something beyond that? When you're really ready, and it's not from a place of sacrifice, and it's from a place of genuine, I don't know, that we can slowly reconnect.
So also what I think is that it's when you feel in your ego that you are the sacrifice all the time and you can't take it anymore, that's the only direction. I guess I would ask the Holy Spirit for help, but didn't realize that that was the only help I could ever get until now. So I think the feeling of feeling like you're the sacrifice, you're the one who's always getting hurt, that it's all your fault, that drove me to look for the other way. And I see now I can decide if I want to suffer or I want to ask the Holy Spirit.
There's only two choices, and you just nicely explained. Do I want to suffer, or am I willing? I don't even have to figure it out. Am I willing to be shown beyond Andrea?
And then you have to really want to be shown to continue. It's not like you're willing, but if it gets something doesn't appeal to you, well, I guess when you're at the end of your rope, that the cliff, you're going off the cliff, and the rope, you're at the end of that. There's only one thought to have, or you're going to die. You're going to feel like and I guess you can only feel that way so long before you actually decide to leave your body. So that's another, I just remember being at the end of my rope and feeling like everything that happened to me was all my fault and that I couldn't do anything. I wasn't smart enough. I didn't rate it. I wasn't worthy enough. And then the Holy Spirit came along and you all helped me tie the knot in my rope and hold on and then climb back up, I guess.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'm still amazed at how long we can play this game until it finally dawns on us that there's got to be another way. And egos they're just amazing. But there comes that point where the Course says there's a limit to how much pain you can tolerate. And when that finally dawns on us, then our willingness to drop what we are invested in and be shown his answer can then slowly open the door to understanding things differently. But dang, we work awful hard. You know, that didn't work. I'm going to manipulate this to work in this way and that way. I got to go over here and on and on and on and on it goes until we finally go, I can't do it anymore. Can't do it anymore. All right. For those who can trust, or excuse me, for those who thrust heaven and its creator aside without a sense of sacrifice and loss. I'm sorry, for who could thrust heaven and its creator aside without a sense of sacrifice and loss? Well, it takes us a lot to get to the point where I'm totally willing to let go of it all. And when that day happens, the doors fling open. Let's see. Like I said, part of the words are chopped off on my page, so I apologize for that. Or who could suffer sacrifice and loss without attempting to restore himself? Well, until I really get that I'm experiencing suffering and loss and sacrifice, and it's a result of my choice, I'm going to constantly wait for something, someone, some situation to change so that I can be okay. And the Course would say, we will search till our death to find something that will provide that service for us until we finally wash our hands. I haven't got a clue. I don't know the answer. You tell me you do. I'm willing to give it a try. And how could you accomplish this yourself when the basis of your attempt is the belief in the reality of deprivation? So again, how could I possibly solve this problem as long as I'm living in deprivation? Not going to happen. Deprivation breeds attack, being the belief that attack is justified. And always the way this is set up is I project the guilt into something else so that I play the part of an innocent victim. I wait for someone or some situation to come forth so that I am justified to hate my brother, make him change so I could be okay. And we all know we can manipulate things in the world. We can move the chairs on the Titanic around. But until this gets healed from the perspective of the mind, we're just manipulating the world. And yes, shifts and changes may occur, but it's not going to bring you to that place and that depth of true healing. And as it begins to dawn on us that me trying to do this is not the answer. There's nowhere in the Course does he say, you need to do this. He asks us to recognize where we are and ask to move out of the way so that he can show us what the answer is. I think I have some input in the answer other than the awareness of the fact that we set this up and this is not working for us anymore. To that degree, until we really get that, the answer is not going to dawn on us. We're going to wait a long time for healing to occur.
Marianne,
Yes.
I really been thinking about the word sacrifice.
Okay.
And I'm really going to understand this the way you're explaining it and looking at what Jesus went through. And I'm thinking, okay, he at the long time ago, he's sacrificing to help people. This is what I'm thinking. But now I understand what you're saying here. I quickly look back to my life. There was opportunities that things were thrown at me, not that thrown at me, but
Right.
to have an opportunity to help somebody. It was a great choice to make that decision to go ahead and help this person. Now I'm thinking sacrificing, that's total commitment to help in different situations. Now, from what you're saying, I can go back and look at all the situations that it wasn't a sacrifice. As you're saying, it was an opportunity that came upon me for that choice, and I chose it.
Right.
Not to separate it, but to realize I'm adding my light to your light, to all my situations, and looking at is all of the people in my life, we are one. So I really like what you're saying on the sacrifice. It's really making me look at my whole life.
Yep.
You can't begrudge it. I can't do this, I can't do that. What am I gonna do? My time's cut off. That's not what it's about. It came to me, not to nobody else,
Right.
not to their friends, not to family. It came to me. So I made that choice.
Right.
But in the end, it's gratitude for the lessons I learned through all those choices.
Right. Well, and that's a tricky scenario, because you might, not you, all of us may decide to do something, but if I'm coming from a belief that that's taken my time, and if I do this for them, I won't get whatever I want, and so on, just examine that and become very aware. I can be doing the thing, but I am playing the sacrifice game versus today, this is what I'm doing because this feels like the right thing to do. And sometimes we have to, I guess you could say, do it the wrong way to come to the point where we really come from a genuine heart of, yes, I'm going to do this because it's the right thing for me to do.
And the one thing I feel the Holy Spirit with me, because there's an ultimate peace
There you
when
go.
you're done. There's an ultimate peace that I cannot describe.
Yes. And there it is right there. When you're coming from that connection with the Holy Spirit, that will override all the rest. Yeah. And just since you mentioned sacrifice, the definition of sacrifice is a central belief in the ego's thought system. Someone must lose if another is to gain. The principle of giving up in order to receive, giving to get. In order to receive God's love, we must pay a price, usually in the form of suffering, to expiate our guilt, sin. The reverse of that principle of salvation or justice. No one loses and everyone gains. Because if I'm coming from a willingness to really join with the Holy Spirit and let him use my vehicle to guide me through my desire of responding to my brother from a place of love, then it's nothing to do with Linda. Linda's vehicle, I guess you could say, is empty. She's going to allow the Holy Spirit to be used as a vehicle to bring forth something beyond Linda. And again, from where we're sitting, that takes some practice because we're so busy being in charge, we're so busy figuring it out, and so on. But when we come to the point where, okay, Holy Spirit, I may not even be real clear on what I'm supposed to be doing here, but I'm willing to step aside and allow you to fill in that space. And, you know, we read that prayer, I'm here only to be truly helpful. I'm here to represent him who sent me. But how many times in any given day may we be asked to do something, even though we're saying that prayer frequently, where we go, nah, I don't want to do that. You must have another plan here, not my plan. And yet, am I willing to simply get out of the way? Mary Ann doesn't know anything. And when we can come from that place, then the doors to heaven begin to open.
So Marianne, I wanted to ask you a
Yeah.
question real quick.
Sure, Jace.
How do you see someone as sinless who's harming you?
Well, first of all, I would say, do what you have to do in the world to the best of your ability, but keep asking to align with the Holy Spirit that knows your brother beyond what your ego eyes have been programmed to see your brother as. And keep bringing it back to, okay, Holy Spirit, your brother's hurting me. Again, doesn't matter what form that comes playing through. And you keep telling me, Holy Spirit, that my brother is love. I absolutely, positively can't connect with that right now, but I'm willing to allow you to show me how I can see my brother through that lens. And that may require, prayer over and over and over for some time before that shifts to the point where that connection starts to fall into place. But if that becomes your prayer, your choice, eventually it will dawn on you as to how that will shift right in front of your eyes. And it could be, years and years that you might hate somebody. And then all of a sudden, bam, you're walking towards them and all that hatred just falls away. But the bottom line is, if I'm aligned with any part of this, and this is still part of my motivation beyond this will continue to run the road until I have no attachment to it any longer. All right, so it is that time. So I think we will say our prayer and we will move along. So everybody take a nice big deep breath. Forgive us our illusions, Father, and help us to accept our true relationship with you, in which there are no illusions and where none can ever enter. Our holiness is yours. What can there be in us that needs forgiveness when yours is perfect? The sleep of forgetfulness is only the unwillingness to remember your forgiveness and your love. Let us not wander into temptation, for the temptation of the Son of God is not your will. And let us receive only what you have given and accept this into the minds which you've created and which you love. Amen. And with that, ho, 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 Merry
ho, ho.
Christmas.
Thank
See you
you,
guys.
Marianne. Oh, cute. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So hopefully we will see you next Saturday, and I'm not sure when we will postpone the party till, but I will keep you posted. So I wish you all a very, very Merry Christmas, and we'll see you soon.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
What can I say? I'm weird.
Oh, we love it.
Good. Got to keep laughing, right?